The presentation tonight is focused on the latest biblical archaeological discoveries in Jerusalem, commemorating Jerusalem Day. So the first section of this presentation will focus on discoveries that date to the First Temple era, which it dates literally to the Bible. And the first artifacts that we're going to, and by the way, everything I'm going to show you here tonight has been uncovered within either the last few months or the last year, except for one that was maybe a year and a half ago. But every one of these discoveries are unique. So the first discovery I'm going to share with you are about two seals which date back to 2,600 years ago. And these seals contain names of individuals. And one of these seals, the name on that seal is actually mentioned in the Bible. And, you know, as you follow the archaeological discoveries in Israel relating to the Bible, one of the most exciting type of finds are the ones that actually link you directly to the Bible. And from all the discoveries that are made, the ones that are actually the most direct link to the Bible are the ones that have names of people that are not found anywhere else except in the Bible. And we're not talking about names like John Doe or Michael Smith. We're talking about names that are very unique names that are found only in the Bible. So these seals are also known by their Latin or Greek name, bulla. And essentially what they were a clay seal that was used to seal either documents or it could have sealed a sack containing different material, usually grain or it could be wine. And it was when the person who put the seal on took their signet ring, and they would stamp their name onto the signet ring, onto the piece of clay while it was still soft, and then you know, these seals dating back to 2,500 to 3,000 years, they can survive destructions, because what happens to a piece of clay when it goes through a fire? It hardens. So they can survive many centuries. So let me go into these seals over here. Firstly, let me tell you where they were found. They were found in the city of David. Now, for those of you who visited Jerusalem and have not been to the city of David, it's like visiting Orlando without going to Disney World. Well, not exactly, but you get the idea. The city of David is the place in Jerusalem where everything began. That's where Jerusalem began. And any visit to Jerusalem without a visit to the city of David, you're missing the heart and soul of Jerusalem. Obviously, the holiest part of Jerusalem is the Temple Mount, and the Western Wall would be the closest place to the Temple Mount. But the site that Jerusalem began, even pre-Temple era, where King David conquered Jerusalem from the Jebusites, was the city of David. Now, within the city of David, you have an area which was the largest excavation in Jerusalem. It's called the Givati parking lot. Now, the Givati parking lot is what it used to be. It used to be the closest parking lot to the Kotel. But after conducting some ground penetrating radar, archaeologists were very curious to know whether there are any interesting structures or artifacts underneath this parking lot, which occupied a very important, sensitive archaeological location right across the entrance to the city of David, which is now like an open museum. And sure enough, I'm going to show you a picture soon of what this excavation turned out to be. So within this Givati parking lot, this is where the two seals were found. The first seal had the following inscript, the following name that was imprinted on it, and it said, belonging to Ikar, son of Matanyahu. It was actually written in Hebrew, not in English, in Paleo-Hebrew, which is the ancient Hebrew script, Le'ikar ben Matanyahu. The second says the following, belonging to Natan Melech, servant of the king. In Hebrew, Lenatan Melech, Eved HaMelech. Now, the second one is the one that is generated most interest because Natan Melech's name actually appears in the Bible as an official in the court of King Josiah. So King, as he was known in Hebrew, Yoshia or Yoshiyahu, if you recall the Haftorah, which is the concluding part, after we read the Torah portion, we always read the Haftorah, which contains a section from the book of the prophets. On the second day of Passover, we read this section, and I'm going to show you now. First, I'm going to show you what these two seals look like. So on the left side, you see the seal of Natan Melech, and you see this is written in Paleo-Hebrew, not the same Hebrew script that we have today, which are the square Hebrew letters that only begun to be used during the Second Temple period. And on this side, we have the other bulla, which is actually, the seal was imprinted on a blue stone, which is pretty unique. And this one says, Ikar, son of Matanyahu. By the way, in Hebrew, Ikar means a farmer. But there is debate whether this man was actually a farmer or perhaps his actual name was Ikar. We don't have another example of someone's name, a Hebrew name called Ikar. Although Ikar could also be in Hebrew the principal or main, but that's if it's spelled with an ayin. But in this case, it was spelled with an aleph. Now I'm going to show you what it actually, where Natan Melech's name is actually mentioned in the Bible. And this is from the book of Kings 2, chapter 23:11. And this is what it says. We know that Yoshiyahu, King Josiah, was one of those kings that literally cleaned house. He, there was a Torah scroll that was discovered that had been forgotten. Believe it or not, it's hard to believe that the Torah had been forgotten. And for a number of years, the Passover offering was not brought in the temple because the kings that preceded King Josiah were simply idol worshippers, and they couldn't care less for what says in the Torah. And then there was a high priest that made a dramatic discovery. He discovered the Bible. And he took the scroll out and he placed it and he read it before King Josiah, King Yoshiyahu. And in it, it says that on the 15th day of the month, on the 14th day of the month of Nisan, you have to bring a Passover sacrifice. Wow, this was major news. They had no idea, and it gives the instructions of how to do so. And that was the first time they brought a Passover offering in a number of years. And it also says that it is forbidden to worship idols. So what did King Josiah do? He cleaned out all of the idols. And this verse in chapter 23 of the second book of Kings states the following. King Josiah and he abolished the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun, from the entrance of the house of the Lord until the chamber of Natan Melech, the officer, who was in the outskirts, and he burnt the sun chariots with fire. So you see that the king literally got rid of all of the idols. And who was his servant? Who was the Eved Melech, which in Hebrew means the servant of the king? His name was Natan Melech. It was one word. Natan Melech, even though it can be in Hebrew, Natan is one name. As a matter of fact, my oldest son's name is Natan, or Nasan, And the second word is melech, which means king. But in this case, in the Bible, it's written as one word, Nasan Melech. Okay, we now move on. We now move on to, so let me show, this is actually, I was telling you before about the Givati parking lot. This is the largest excavation in Jerusalem. And this entire excavation site that you're seeing here in this picture, at one point in time used to be a parking lot. And you can see that the parking lot, after determining that there were structures underneath the ground using ground penetrating radar, they completely removed layer upon layer upon layer, going past the Islamic layer, down to the Byzantine layer, the Roman layer, the Second Temple era layer, the First Temple era layer. And in the First Temple era layer, they found an administrative building. In this image, you can't exactly see, but it seems like to be one of these structures over here, an administrative building that must have served as one of the main administration buildings due to the size of its stones, that these two seals were found. And apparently these people were important officials because this was an administrative building. And they also found layers of ash, layers of destruction, which is a testament to the fire and the conflagration that took place when the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem and destroyed the first temple. The second seal that was discovered is a seal that has the name Adoniyahu. Now, Adoniyahu, Adoniyahu, if you see here, it has the same name of King David's son, if that name rings a bell to you. And the actual seal says like this: belonging to Adoniyahu, the royal steward. In the actual Hebrew, it says not royal steward, it says Adoniyahu Asher al Habayit, which literally means who oversees the house, which means this indicates that this man Adoniyahu was the highest official in the king's court, because that's the connotation of what it means when you say that someone is in charge and oversees the house. It means he is the highest official in the kingdom. Who was the king that Adoniyahu was in charge of his kingdom? We don't know. What we do know is that this dates back to the First Temple period. There are a number of candidates of which kings this Adoniyahu character could have served, but we don't know for sure. The way they know how far back a certain seal dates depends. Number one, they can tell by the script. It's Hebrew. It dates back to First Temple era style Hebrew, and they can also tell by the objects that are found around it, which can be carbon dated to a particular time period. This particular seal was found near the foundations of the Western Wall, underneath the Western Wall plaza, towards the southern end, where the southwestern corner of the where the famous Robinson's Arch is located. Underneath that, all the way under the underground, is where they're conducting excavations near the foundations of the Western Wall of the Kotel, and that's where this seal was found, which is very close, literally adjacent to the Temple Mount. This is the actual seal of Adoniyahu, and as I mentioned before, the name Adoniyahu is the same name as one of King David's sons. It's actually his youngest son who rebelled against him and wanted to take over the kingdom while his father, King David, was frail and old. And even though King David had promised to Bathsheba that the kingdom would pass on to her son, King Solomon, Shlomo. And Adoniyahu was actually, the rebellion was quelled, and King David made it clear that his son Solomon would be the king after him. Well, this is not the same Adoniyahu, because this doesn't date back to King David's time, but it dates back to somewhere in the middle of this First Temple period. This is a very unique find and it's called the Becca weight. What is the Becca weight? So um, you may be familiar. Let me first show you pictures of what this is. It's a small little stone weight, and you can see here there are 3 Hebrew letters, not the type of Hebrew that we're familiar with, but again, this is Paleo Hebrew, which is the ancient Hebrew used during the First Temple era. So this gives an indication that this dates back to the First Temple era. And this was a stone weight. And what was the significance of this stone weight and the name? It actually says the words Becca, which in Hebrew is spelled Beis Kuf Ayin. What is the significance of this? So this is literally straight from the Bible. Firstly, we know it's a First Temple stone weight based on the style of Hebrew that was used. Secondly, we all know that the Jews had to give a half shekel tax. And this was something that was mandatory. It was like a flat tax. It made no difference of what your status, in your socioeconomic status, whether you were poor or wealthy, everyone had to give a half shekel tax once a year towards the upkeep of the temple. These were collected beginning from Rosh Chodesh Adar up until Passover. And it would be pretty nice if in the US, we would all be taxed just 1/2 shekel. But apparently back in those days, that was sufficient for the upkeep of the temple. Now, what exactly is a half shekel? So a half shekel, or is a half of a shekel. What is a shekel? A shekel is actually a weight. Contrary to what some people may believe, that a shekel, like in Israel, is a currency. It's a certain amount of a currency. But actually, shekel is not a currency. It's only in modern day Israel that shekel is considered a currency. Shekel is an actual ancient weight measurement. And a half shekel is a half of that, which is approximately, they say a shekel is about 11.3 grams. So essentially what was required from every Jew was to contribute about 6 or 7 grams of silver towards the upkeep of the temple. Now, not at every time did they actually have a coin which weighed the amount of a half shekel. So what did they do, especially during the First Temple period? Later, they minted coins that were half shekels. But what did they do when they didn't have these half shekel coins? It's not like today where you can get a $50, even though the half dollar doesn't exactly go by weight. What they did was they just made sure to give the weight of a half shekel of silver. How did they determine that? So that's where the stone weight comes in. The person who would contribute would arrive at the temple, and he would take some silver nuggets out of his pocket or pouch. They would place it on a scale, and one side of the scale had this small Becca weight that we just saw before, and the other side they would add the silver nuggets, small pieces, until it balanced out, and that's how you knew that you gave the amount of a Becca, because a Becca is the amount of weight of a half shekel. It's interesting is that this Becca stone weight had the Hebrew words Becca written on it, as we saw before, but it was written in mirror script, which means it was written backwards, just like the seals that we saw before, also written in mirror script, so that when you stamp it on, it's written in, it comes out in the correct script. For some reason, this looks like the people who inscribed the letters on this weight were probably the same people that used to form the seals, and accidentally they put it in mirror script. And this is again found near the foundations of the Western Wall, very close to the Temple Mount, literally adjacent. And this is like from the part of a temple activity where you can see something was left that tells us how the people came in and contributed the half shekel. Here is a quote from straight out of the Bible from the book of Exodus, and you can see for yourself. Everyone had to contribute 1 beka per head, that is half a shekel, according to the holy shekel. The holy shekel was a little bit more valuable than a non-holy shekel. For each one who goes through the counting from 20 years old and upward, for 603,550 people, straight out of the book of Exodus, Parshas Kisisa, and you can see that it says Beka Lagilgoilis. Everyone had to give that measurement. And how did we determine how much a half shekel is? From this stone. Oh, we just did this. Okay. Now we're going to move on to Second Temple era finds. So in little less than a year ago, in June of 2019, a very exciting opening took place underground in the city of David. The expanded section of the Pilgrimage Road. And this is a picture that was published in all the newspapers where Jason Greenblatt, who was an advisor to the president, David Friedman, who was the US ambassador to Israel, were ceremoniously using a sledgehammer to open up a wall, which is only constructed for the purpose of this ceremony, thereby inaugurating a 200-meter section of an underground road dating back to the Second Temple period. Now, the significance of this road, I'm going to show you a picture of the road in a minute. Here's the picture of the road. Now, this road was a stepped road. The road dates back to approximately 30 of the Common Era, and it took about 10 years to construct. In total, from one end to the other was about 600 meters. At the southern end, it began at a magnificent pool called the Shiloach Pool, or in English, the Siloam Pool. And at the northern end, it went all the way up to the Temple Mount. So essentially, this step road was, in its heyday, during the Second Temple period, was the last section that the pilgrims who came for the 3 major festivals in Jerusalem, this is the last section of road they took until they actually arrived at the stairs of the Temple Mount. And this, what you see here now, is really fascinating. What you see now is only a small section of the original road. In its original size, the road was about 25 feet wide. On either side of the road, there were shops, there were homes. At some point that we're going to see soon, there was a marketplace. And because it was going up a hill, that's why they had steps. Certain parts of it, there was flat. It all depended on the topography of how it was heading up along the slopes, the eastern slope of the city of David. And this particular road is now underground. 2,000 years ago, this road was under the sky like any other road we have today. But because of all the destruction that the Romans destroyed Jerusalem, all of the destruction collapsed over this road. And believe it or not, this road, if you calculate, if the road opened up in about 30 of the Common Era, and Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 of the Common Era, we're talking 40 years. This road was only in use by pilgrims for 40 years. So it's in relatively good condition as it was exposed now 2,000 years later. The goal of this excavation is to completely expose the road until the final terminus, which is the Temple Mount, the southwestern section of the western wall. But this is a huge project. This was probably one of the most expensive and most difficult archaeological undertakings probably anywhere in the world. You can't imagine how much money has been poured into this project. as you can see, that because this road is being opened up and underground, there are homes and a street above this road, above ground, depending on what part of the road you're on, anywhere from 50 feet below underground to 20 feet underground. And therefore, they have to be very careful that the section of earth on top doesn't collapse down, because this literally being tunneled through. So you can see they have Israeli engineers are working together with Swiss tunneling engineers who are who have a lot of experience tunneling through the Alps, and they are constructing these metal structures that are engineered to hold up, to withstand the earth that is above this ground. One day, this entire section of 600 meters will be open to the public, and this will be, you can literally retrace your steps to the Temple Mount, just like the pilgrims did 2,000 years ago during the temple period. This is one of the interesting finds that were found. I'm not going to show you now everything that was found in this, because otherwise we'll be here for a few hours, but I'm just going to show you the latest discovery that was made inside, because as they remove earth, tunneling through this thing to expose the road, they come across various artifacts that are discovered. What they found was a stone tabletop used to measure liquid volumes. Now, this is what it looked like. Here are two views. This is a very unique find, and you can see a very neatly cut cavity in this tabletop stone. And you can see here's a bird's eye view, and there's a hole at the bottom. This is this indicates that this was found in an area which was more of an expanded area, and that now tells the archaeologists that where the location that this was found was the ancient Jerusalem Central Marketplace, sort of like the Shuk Machane Yehuda that exists in Jerusalem today. That if some of you have been to Israel, where all this you can buy anything you want under the sun in that marketplace. This was the ancient marketplace, and the guy who was the market manager was the guy who actually controlled this unique tabletop measuring device. And the way it worked was like this. It used to measure volumes of liquid. So you can see there was a hole at the bottom. Let me go back to this picture so I can explain it a little better. Let's say someone wanted to purchase wine or oil, but they wanted to purchase a precise amount. Let's say 1 liter. How would you measure an exact liter? A liter is not a measurement they had in those days. They had other measurements, like for example, a log. So the market manager had this one precise measuring device with a cavity and a little hole at the bottom that could be plugged. And they would either put his finger at the bottom or they would plug it with something and fill up this cavity with the amount of oil or wine or any other liquid that would want to be sold. And when it was filled to the top, they would then bring it near another bucket or some other vessel, and they would remove the plug or remove their finger, and the liquid would go pouring into that container. And that way, that container would have the precise measurement of that particular volume. So let's say this was a liter. We knew this was a precise liter. You can see here that there's a beginning of a partial second cavity, which probably had a different amount of volume than this one right here. But this is a very unique find. Also, very interesting, this was found alongside dozens of stone measurement weights. This indicates that this was actually a place where the market manager, sort of the guy who was running the market, was the only guy that had that controlled this tabletop measuring. Only one of three that were found in Jerusalem in total. We're now going to move on to the last find, which is the post-Second Temple era. And this This artifact was actually found just about 2 weeks ago. It's so fresh. And what this is a Bar Kokhba coin. Now, you've all heard of Bar Kokhba, or if you didn't hear, you may want to Google it. Bar Kokhba was the one who rebelled against the Romans. There were two rebellions against Romans. One was toward the end of the Second Temple period, which obviously concluded with the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans, and thereby, they just quashed the rebellion. The second rebellion took place in the year 130 of the Common Era, which is roughly about 60 years after the destruction of the Second Temple. And that rebellion lasted for about 3.5 years, and that was led by this superstar called Bar Kokhba. As a matter of fact, the name Bar Kokhba means a star, a son of a star. It was such a star that even the great sage Rabbi Akiva believed that he would be the Messiah that would redeem the Jews and rebuild the temple. And he actually got very close to that. He managed to hold the Romans at bay for 3 full years, that the Roman emperor Hadrian had to bring Roman legions from other parts of Europe, as far as England or France, and had to bring them to Israel to be able to quell this rebellion. The only thing is that Bar Kokhba, despite his success and his rebellion, his rebels, they were never able to penetrate Jerusalem. Jerusalem was always still within Roman control. So, but what they did was they minted coins in order to establish, part of establishing independence is minting your own coins. Now, they didn't have their actual coins. It wasn't minted from scratch. They took Roman coins and they superimposed their own imprints. And this is a coin that was found in Jerusalem. And what's unique is that you would think that there are many Bar Kokhba coins that have been found. However, very few coins were actually found in Jerusalem. Why? Because Bar Kokhba and his rebels never actually penetrated Jerusalem. Here is the coin that was found on one side. On the front of the coin, it says, year 2 of the freedom of Israel. Again, this is written in Paleo-Hebrew, even though during Bar Kokhba's time, the standard method of Hebrew writing was actually the same type like we have today. But I guess for nostalgic reasons, Bar Kokhba decided to use ancient Hebrew style that was used in the First Temple period. On the other, so you have a cluster of grapes over here, and year 2 of the freedom of Israel. They have also other coins that have year 3 of the freedom of Israel. On the other side, the obverse, you have a palm tree, which is sort of a symbol of Israel. And then it said the words Jerusalem. So here is a few interesting points. It was discovered in the Davidson Archaeological Park next to the Western Wall, very close to where the Adoniyahu seal was found. Only 1 of 4 found in Jerusalem, and it's the first one that was actually found with the name Jerusalem in Jerusalem. So the other 3 coins that Bar Kokhba minted, that Bar Kokhba and his rebels minted, did not actually have the name Jerusalem on it. Only had the word Israel. This was the first coin that was found that had the name Israel in it. How did it end up in Jerusalem? This is the working theory. Possible souvenir from Roman legionnaire. So one of the Romans who came back from quelling the rebellion of the Bar Kokhba rebellion found one of the Bar Kokhba coins somewhere, put it into his pocket, and brought it to Jerusalem, where the 10th Legion, where the legions were based, and probably lost it there. And that's how this coin was discovered, because it was not brought there by the Bar Kokhba rebels, as they never entered Jerusalem. Again, here's the Bar Kokhba coin. This is something that was just discovered 2 weeks ago, about the time of Lag BaOmer. So I hope that you enjoyed.